because understanding this is so important, because if you don't know your vocational voice, here's the danger. You might be doing a bad impersonation of yourself.
Created on purpose and for purpose.
Hey, welcome back to the Daron Earlewine podcast. Daron Earlewine, your host, here with you, and excited to get to the the first core question. I did a little intro in the last episode. If you're with us, if you weren't, go back and listen to episode 160, whatever that last one was, the intro to the four core questions. So you get a little understanding of what we're doing, what we're getting into. And what I want to jump into quickly right off the bat here for this episode is to look at the very first question. And the very first question is, who am I? Really good, the understanding of identity. I want to thank you so much for downloading the podcast, whether you're watching it on YouTube, listening to it through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever podcast platform you use. Thanks so much for downloading it. And I would ask a big favor is if you'd be willing to subscribe to the channel, whether it's an audio or here on YouTube. If you're watching the podcast, it makes a big difference. Appreciate it. And if you want little tidbits of the podcast throughout the week, maybe just an appetizer before you watch it. If you haven't gone and followed me on Instagram or on YouTube Shorts, please do that, because every week we send out little highlights of the podcast. And so just search my name, Daron Earlewine, on Instagram. I'm on there. I think I'm the only Daron Earlewine. And if you look at it, there's a bunch of posts on there. You can stay up to date with what we're doing and just get your appetizer for the podcast each and every week, or maybe just a reminder. And we post some old stuff. We'll be like, I remember that episode 2 years ago. That was so good. And give you a little inspiration in that. Okay. So go check that stuff out. And thanks so much once again for being a part of the podcast community. The first core question we're going to take a look at, we're going to examine, right? We're going to dig into is, who am I? And we're talking about identity. And if there's anything that goes sideways or that causes our life to go sideways, it's a misunderstanding or an illusion of our identity. Who are we as a human being? And then specifically, who was I uniquely created to be? And if we have some statements to guide this, right? The number one statement, because we say it all the time, right, is, who are you? You are someone who was created on purpose and for a purpose. You were. Okay, you're not an accident. You're not a rerun. You were created on purpose and for a purpose. Here's something else that's true about you. You are someone who was created and has been designed to fulfill a unique vocation. We're going to unpack what that means. What is a unique vocation? Okay. And I believe you have been given a voice to create that future. Okay, we're going to unpack what that voice is. We're looking at what we call the 5 voices. It's a great tool to help you unpack and really understand who you are, right? Your leadership voice and how you show up at work, at home, at play. And I hope it is something that's going to be really impactful to you, okay? A couple of quotes that I love in this one is, the first one comes from Desmond Tutu, and he says this. He says, I am who I am because of who we all are. Okay, I am who I am because of who we all are. And in that, I think Desmond is really hitting the understanding of what we are as human beings. And we talked a little bit about the difference of human beings and just animals in the last episode. But we're going to dig a little bit further, because I think there is something transcendent, spiritual, true about who we are as human beings. And this origin story for humans is shared in the Jewish scriptures, right? The first 5 books of the Old Testament, called the Pentateuch. It's also in your modern day, Christian Bible. And it comes from the book of Genesis, the very first book of the Bible. And another quote that hits on this too, okay, that I thought was great from Dennis Waitley. He's an author. He says this: it's not what you are that holds you back. It's what you think you're not. Isn't that good? It's not what you are that holds you back. It's what you think you're not. And that's why this core question is so important to ask and answer, right? Because if Desmond says, I am who I am because of who we all are, there's this understanding that is deep to what it means to be human. And if I don't actually believe that, if that's not an answer I've gotten and found my life on, right? It's not that's not holding you back. The fact that that's the truth, the fact that you don't believe that it is true. And I think it comes down to these four questions, kicking off with this first question. It comes back to the first, in my opinion, 5 words of the Bible, which says this: in the beginning, God created. In the beginning, God created. And we're not here to debate, right? Was it 7 days? Was it not? Did God create things with the appearance of age, or were they, was it just the beginning of it? And what's the time frame of this? And then I'm not here to debate and figure all that out, right? We're not talking about macro or micro evolution here. This is not that kind of podcast. Those are great questions. Those are great conversations, but we're not having those today. The conversation I want to have is that I think for you to become who you were born to be, I think for you to live a life that's effective, I think for you to live a life that actually gives answers, right, to these deep questions, you've got to know who you are. And I think a part of understanding your value is understanding that you didn't just accidentally get here. God created you on purpose and for a purpose. In the beginning, God created. He started it all. And I think that can bring so much peace, so much understanding to the good, to the bad, to finding our place in this world. And I think a lot of us struggle with that. And that's okay to wrestle with that point. This is what I believe. I'm not saying you have to believe it. I'm saying this is what I believe. I'm saying it's the core of what we believe at Rogue Collective, what we believe at Blackbird Mission. But there's, I think, a lot of questions that get asked about this. And I was watching Country Music Awards show this past year, and Casey Musgraves is on there. I think she's an amazing songwriter, amazing lyricist. She's got just a beautiful voice, and it's just her acoustic guitar. And she began singing her song Architect. If you've not heard it, I want to encourage you. The podcast is over to go check it out. Go download the song and listen to it. But here are some of the lyrics to it. It starts off and it says this: even something as small as an apple, it's simple and somehow complex, sweet and divine, the perfect design. Can I speak to the architect? And there's a canyon that cuts through the desert. Did it get there because of a flood? Was it devised, or were you surprised when you saw how grand it was? Was it all thought out? Was it thought out at all, or just paint on a wall? Is there anything that you regret? I don't understand. Are there blueprints or plans? Can I speak to the architect? Right? The last verse says this: sometimes I look in the mirror and I wish I could make a request. Can I pray it away? Am I shapeable clay? Or is this as good as it gets? One day you're on top of a mountain so high you'll never come down. Then the wind at your back carries embers and ash. Then it burns your whole house to the ground. Then she comes back. And this is the last verse. Sorry, this one says this: I thought I was too broken and maybe too hard to love. I was in a weird place. Then I saw the right face and the stars and the planets lined up. Does it happen by chance? Is it all happenstance? Do we have any say in this mess? Is it too late to make some more space? Can I speak to the architect? This life that we make, is it random or fate? Can I speak to the architect? And then she ends the song with this question: is there an architect? And I think when you look at everything that she talks about in that song, right? Love, creation, pain, struggle, is if it's all random, if it's all happenstance, if there's no purpose behind it, it's tough to really find joy in something that's great because it was an accident. And it's really tough to find any meaning in suffering because it obviously has no purpose. But if there is an architect, then I believe there is an architect. It's important for us to know, well, what does it mean that the Jewish scriptures, the Christian scriptures say that we're actually created in his image? What does it mean to say that I'm an image bearer of God? Here's a couple of things it means. First and foremost, it doesn't mean you look like God, right? God doesn't look like me, doesn't look like you. We're not talking about physical resemblance here. We're talking about character. We're talking about the spiritual essence of what we are. And it kind of comes back to what I was saying in that last episode about, right, what's different about you than your dog and your cat? Well, you're an image bearer of God. It means this, that you have a spiritual and moral resemblance to God. Right? Human beings, we possess this quality that reflects something about this transcendent nature of God. That we can have the ability to reason. We have the ability to love, to choose between good and evil, right? And to form relationships, right? And that comes down to understanding things like morality, justice, righteousness. And these things resonate in our soul. Even if you're at a place where maybe you're questioning, you're examining right now and understanding what your thoughts on God are. Think about it this way. Why is it that we can watch a National Geographic special and we can watch a lion eat a zebra and go, that's gross, unfortunate for the zebra, but we don't go, that's immoral and terrible and injustice. We need to go arrest a lion. He ate that zebra. That's totally wrong, right? We don't say that. We go, that's kind of gruesome. And, I wish the zebra would have been faster, but that's the way it works in the animal kingdom. But if you go try to eat your neighbor, right, we're going to have a problem with that, right? You're going to make the news and not for good reasons. And you're going to go to jail for a long time. There's a reason there, right? And something in your soul, even if you don't have faith, goes, that's wrong. Right? There are certain things that our souls, right? They know that they are spiritually and morally wrong. And it's not just because we evolved to think that. It's because it's actually hardwired in the image that we were created within. Here's another thing that happens when we're created in the image of God. There's a rational and intellectual capacity that we have. Right? The ability to think, the ability to make the decisions, the ability to problem solve, that we can create art and societies and engage in complex communication, right? It comes down to this idea that we were created to create and designed to design. I ask people this all the time, like, what do human beings uniquely create? And people say, well, they create human beings. Well, that's not unique, right? Horses create horses, dogs create dogs, right? Trees create trees. It's not unique that we can procreate in our kind. But what is unique about human beings is that human beings create the future. Right? Every system, structure, every society, right, that has been formed from the history of humanity, every page of every history book that you can read, right, everything there was done by human beings. And I think we have this capacity because we are created in the image of a creator. That's why we can do it. Here's another thing. We're created as image, and what we have is we have a relational nature. I say this all the time, is that I believe as a human being, you were created for and by love. There's a relational nature to who you are. I believe that being created who you are, an image bearer of God, means you have dominion and stewardship over creation. And another reason that we feel it deeply in our side when we see the earth, right, being disrespected, being harmed, because there's something about us that is supposed to care and have stewardship over this beautiful planet that God's given us, that He's created. Another part is this, is that we're given creativity and co-creation. If you look back in those ancient scriptures, both in the Pentateuch and the Bible, we have this story of creation that's kind of interesting. Is that it says that God creates Adam and Eve and humanity, right? Adam and Eve in His own image. And then it says that He actually invites Adam into the process of naming animals. But the reason that you feel like your life should be purposeful is because the first thing that humanity did was they got to join God and actually start naming stuff. Like, how awesome is that? Like, if you could see a giraffe and be like, yeah, I came up with that giraffe. It's phenomenal, right? And that's part of what I think what calls out to you to want to do something purposeful in your life, because it's part of your image, that you're creative, that you actually can join and co-create with the divine. The last thing is this, there's a dignity and a value that is inherent in your worth, regardless of race or gender, social status, or any other characteristic you can think about. Like, every human being, right, shares this common grace, they would even call it, of the nature of God. This foundation of belief, right? It's why Christians, why Jews, and they will hold up this idea, right, of the sanctity of human life, and why we're driven to work for justice and equality and human rights, because it's down to the essence of who we are as a human being. Okay? That's first and foremost, I believe, who you are and how much value, creativity, relational ability, spiritual ability, like all of these things that are just in you because of who you are. Now I want to get more specific to who you are as a person. And that comes back to that next line. I believe that you have been designed to fulfill a unique vocation. Vocation comes from the Latin word vocare, right? Which means calling. I believe that your life has a calling on it. I believe that as a human being, you have a vocation, a calling. And I believe you have a unique voice to fulfill it. Jeff Goins, one of my favorite authors in his book, The Art of Work, says this: a vocation is not something you try. It's someone you become. Someone you become. And I believe it was pre-planned for your life, which is beautiful. And if to understand this, the distinction between an occupation and a vocation, I want you to go back and listen to the episode where we talked about this in the Four Noble Quests, because what we talked about there is that all of us have jobs, okay, and you may have 8 to 10 jobs throughout your life. In your occupation, Dave Gibbons, one of my mentors, says it's kind of like your uniform. It's the outfit that you wear. And we change outfits all the time, right? And you have an occupation, but it doesn't define who you are. And the difficult part, and we talked about this in the past episode, is that we spend so much of our life trying to find an occupation that will fulfill our sense of calling and our sense of destiny. It never will. But when you can get clear and begin answering this question, who am I? And you can answer the question of your vocation. Well, that vocation can actually show up in any occupation that you have and allow you to live with peace and purpose and passion wherever you are. And in that, it's important that you begin to then understand what we call your vocational voice. And I believe that there are 5 voices. 5, these are the one I believe are the kind of the archetypes of design for humanity. And we fulfill one of these roles. And here's what they are. There are 5 vocational callings, I believe. It's this: there are pioneers, creatives, connectors, nurturers, and guardians. Now, I believe that this actually has biblical roots in Ephesians chapter 4. If you want to dig more into that, you can go check out the Spiritual DNA online course. But I want to take you through understanding these roles. There is an assessment you can go take it for free at 5voices.com. A great leadership development company out of the UK has developed this assessment, and I think it'd be great for you to go take a look at it. So what I want to do for the rest of the podcast is walk you through these 5 voices and give you a chance to kind of see what seems most curious to you, what seems like it could be most closely to who you are. Because understanding this is so important, because if you don't know your vocational voice, here's the danger. You might be doing a bad impersonation of yourself. Okay? I don't know if you could do impersonations, if you ever tried. I used to do a really good Chris Farley when I was in high school. Now I don't really do impersonations, although I've got some friends that really do a good Donald Trump, and it's really hilarious. I'm trying to work on that because I think it could be great for dinner parties. But a lot of times when I speak, I will show people that I can also do a pretty poor Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's very limited in this voice, but it sounds something like this, right? Like, get in the chopper, right? It's tough to say it quietly. When I do it live, I yell it really loud, right? Get down, right? It's not good at all. No one would hire me to be a voiceover actor to fill in lines for Arnold Schwarzenegger. But here's the funny thing is, if I actually thought, right? If I actually thought that was my voice, you would never listen to this freaking podcast ever, right? Think about everything I've said in the past 18 minutes of this podcast. If all of it, I was like, the voices, right? Find your calling. You would be like, he is not from Austria or wherever Arnold Schwarzenegger's from, right? That's not how he sounds. He sounds so foolish. So I couldn't do my job. I would be fired. No one would download the podcast. No one's asking me to come speak, okay? I don't think I'd be married to my wife, because I don't think she would probably dated me at the first date. I was like, oh, maybe steak and wine. She'd be like, I thought you grew up in Arizona. That sounds real, right? If somehow I convinced my wife to marry me and we had kids, parenting would be a disaster, because I'd be doing this terrible Arnold Schwarzenegger impersonation at all times when I'm parenting. Right? Brush your teeth, do your homework. Then my kids would be like, Dad, come on. Dad, are you kidding me? Like, we know that's not your voice. You're just really ruining your life. And that's just for comic relief there in the podcast. But I want you to think about it. Like, think about if you were created to be a pioneer, which I'm going to unpack what that voice is. And the way that you were raised, the expectations of your parents, maybe the expectation of the career you have, you've been really, really trying hard to be a nurturer. And the whole time, right, it's not going very well at work. And at home, it doesn't go very well, right? And even in yourself, you're kind of embarrassed of yourself most of the time. You're like, I just don't feel right in my life. It's possibly because you're doing a bad impersonation of yourself. And that's why I want to help you understand your vocational voice so that you can begin to become who you were born to be. Fair? All right. Let's go quickly through the voices. Pioneer. Okay. A pioneer is someone who is driven. They're usually a natural born leader. Think, entrepreneur. Okay. They're going to be someone who is often sent out on a type of mission. Okay. They're champions oftentimes of aligning people with resources to like win an objective or make something happen. They have a very like anything is possible type attitude with their life. Sometimes pioneers can be seen as a little arrogant because I think they actually have to have a lot of self-confidence to believe they can actually go create the future, to move something forward, to find the quickest, fastest, and most effective way to do things. Pioneers often have outside the box type thinking, meaning that they don't often want to build on the foundations that were, right? They want to start something new. They got a lot of courage in a pioneer, a lot of zest and passion, oftentimes very inspiring communicators. Okay. If you're possibly a pioneer, and that's your vocational voice, I want you to look back in your life. And my guess is that you have been starting new things since you were a kid. And that's something that you've seen. When we talk about the last episode where I was explaining the naming of the Rogue Collective and the idea of Rogue Bees, is my guess is if you are a pioneer, you have felt like a rebel a lot of your life and maybe been treated that way, but you're not a rebel. You're a rogue, okay, a rogue bee, or understood as a pioneer. Status quo drives you nuts. And if you're in an organization that you didn't start or don't lead, you're probably often finding yourself, kind of banging your head against the wall of things that don't make sense to you, that you want to change, that you want to start new things. A couple blind spots with the pioneer. They can be very me focused. Okay. Be seen as, like I said, arrogant at sometimes. Oftentimes an immature pioneer, right, will undervalue the other four voices. And I've had this explained to me one time that the pioneer is kind of like the thumb on the hand, okay, where the thumb has this ability to actually touch all the other fingers. It's the only digit, if you will, on the hand that can do that. And so oftentimes pioneers will be like, look how awesome I am. I can do all the stuff that everybody else can. And oftentimes, if you're a pioneer, you can do some of the other roles. And sometimes that's needed and necessary because you're starting something. And so instead of having a full team of people to work with, it's just you. The key there is to realize that you only serve that purpose and to begin to value the other voices and create a team where that actually happens. Pioneers get very frustrated when people don't get it. They don't get their vision. They don't get them. Oftentimes they push too hard, too fast, and kind of leave an emotional and relational wake of destruction because they're just trying to go and get things done. And sometimes for them, it's tough to separate business from personal, and then they can kind of hurt people with their tone or tact. And if there was a volume knob, okay, on a pioneer, it would be like up to like 11, right? Kind of like the Spinal Tap. Our RMs go to 11. Well, a pioneer usually does. Their system of like of speaking would be like a bullhorn or like a bazooka. And sometimes pioneers don't know what it's like to be on the other side of them in a negotiation or conversations. And so all of these things about pioneers, they're going to show up. This is not just how you are at work. This is how you are in life, in love, at play. It's who you are. You've been put on earth to be a pioneer. Okay. That's one of the voices, the first voice. Second one is the creative. Okay. The creative. When you look at a creative, oftentimes can be an introverted person. There's someone that likes to retreat, right? They like to be creative. They're more of a visionary. There's somebody who it's usually very authentic with their emotions, their thoughts, and their perspectives. If you're looking at jobs, and sometimes that you see often in creatives, right? They could be people who are like poets and songwriters, rappers, screenwriters, aid development people. They could be someone also involved in kind of risk management in some ways, because the creative, they also have they can be a very good like early like a radar warning system, where they have an innate ability that's given to them to be able to interpret events and kind of the times and be able to bring perspective and critique upon it. And so it's not necessarily, the like fortune tellers, but it is a situation where if you are a creative, is that that you're able to observe and kind of say, hey, I'm looking at this event and this makes sense to me. And if we don't change this, if this is not something we take a look at, what happens is in the future, right, we're going to see these events take place. And so it's very necessary. I think that's one of the reasons that so many creatives are actually drawn to the creative arts, because they're able to use their artistic expression to actually bring critique and speak into the moment in a very prophetic kind of word. John Bellion, one of my favorite, I don't know if he's he's a songwriter, and sometimes it's R&B, sometimes it's rap. He wrote a ton of hit songs. There's lots of John Bellion's lyrics that are very, what I would say prophetic, and that would be kind of the biblical word if you're looking for that for the creative. Okay, if you're looking at some of the creative at their best. Like I said, they see the future. They're future oriented, very visionary. They see long-term opportunities as well as potential dangers. They're often never satisfied, right, with good enough. They want things to be the best they can possibly be. They have a strong sense of social conscience and a desire for integrity in an organization or in a relationship or in a family. One of the difficult things about people that are creatives is that oftentimes they can fail to notice and celebrate the 90% of something that's going great, because they see the 10% of something that's not doing very well. Sometimes budgeting, financial things, financial constraints aren't things they see real easily, because they just see the vision. Okay. So second voice there is the creative. Third voice is the connector. Okay. The connector, if you're looking for a biblical word that comes along with this, would be an evangelist. And that word evangelist literally means the bearer of good news. And that's what a connector is. Connectors connect people with people and resources to people. And so if you're a connector, right? A connector is someone who they've always got a guy, right? You've got this friend, or maybe this is you, where somebody starts telling you something, you go, oh, I got this girl. She's amazing. She's the best. She best nails, best hair, best restaurant, best coffee shop, best movie, best new song. Is these connectors, right? They always have good news that they're connecting other people to, or they have good news that are resources and people that they can connect people to. So they are absolute champions of relationships, strategic partnerships. They have a huge, usually Rolodex, you know what I mean, or contact list of people that they're always connected with. They're usually amazing storytellers. They're usually very positive people. If you're looking for a cartoon character, they're kind of like Tigger, real high energy. Whatever we need, I can get it. Like I've got a source, which is great. Connectors, boundless energy, creativity, imagination. Once again, usually very future oriented in their thinking. Some blind spots. Connectors can usually be people pleasers, because oftentimes, right, they want people to like them. They want to develop this network of people. And so it's tough for them to challenge people. Oftentimes they don't hear or really engage in critical feedback often. And some of that's because a lot of times when you're a connector, you don't want to hear the negative, because when you have a person or you have a resource that you really believe in, it really becomes personal to you. And so that makes it difficult for you to hear negative feedback, because sometimes you feel like they're attacking you personally, which they're not. They're just maybe attacking your idea. Another interesting thing I've seen with a blind spot of connectors is they tend to boomerang conversations. I do this because I'm a connector. I get this, right? You'll start talking about something and you'll say, I'm trying to make this decision about buying a new car, and I've got this thing. then you're deep into your conversation about the issue that you have. And I go, oh man, I got it, man. I totally, that reminds me of a story in college. One time my brother and I, we had this old, and all of a sudden I'm telling you a story about myself instead of actually showing up for you to give you advice. So some blind spots for the connector. Right. All right, let's talk about the nurturer. All right, the nurturer is the next voice, and the nurturer is another word you could use there as a shepherd. Right, they're amazing at nurturing and caring for people. They care for others with a tender heart. Right, they see needs. They confront, but they're able to also encourage. Right, nurturers really long to see people grow to their full potential, and they have an amazing ability to empathize and stimulate people to care for each other. Which is an amazing gift. They are basically like the relational, oil of any team or any family, any organization. One of the things about nurturers that you have to be careful of as far as their level of their voice, right? It's probably like a 2. They're not cranked up very high. If you want to have an effective team meeting, you're always going to want your nurturer to speak first. A lot of times you come into a meeting, I've been in meetings before where, the pioneer will come in, or maybe the creative or the connector. They got all these ideas and they're going out and they're just selling everybody on the idea. And the whole time the nurturer is thinking, this is a bad idea because this is going to hurt this and this is going to hurt this and this isn't going to work. And the team desperately needs to hear, right, the relational impact of the decisions they're going to make, but the nurturer won't speak up. And oftentimes the pioneers and the creatives and the connectors won't stop and go, hey, could you help us think about how this is going to feel to people? And so they'll leave a meeting, make a terrible decision, or a family will make a decision that hurts a member of the family or someone else. And what happens is the nurturer won't speak up because one of the blind spots there is they often they undervalue their contribution. And it's so necessary. If life is a relationship and everything else is just the details, we need nurturers to speak up because we got to care for each other, right? And so they have to value what they bring to any organization, any family, any team, because they're so necessary. One of the interesting things about nurturers is that they are 43% of the population are nurturers, which makes sense, right? If we're creating God's image, God created us on purpose and for a purpose, and He knew it was about love. It's about relationships. It's probably why He put 43% of people on earth that actually are amazing nurturers. Some blind spots, right? I just talked about that as well already about the nurturer, right? They can take things a little bit too personal. They often don't speak up when they need to. They can feel unable to challenge, right? Or a proposed direction or decision when they disagree. And that's something that they've got to find their voice because they're so needed. Okay, that's a nurturer. The last one is the guardian. The guardian, if you're looking for a connection to the scriptures, it would be a teacher. Teacher guardians, they are masters of process. They're masters of information. They're amazing at they can take very difficult things and make them simple to understand. They can break things down into processes and systems and structures. Administrative, usually superheroes, great with details. They're executive directors, they're administrators, like there's some job scientists, accountants, numbers and processes and details make sense and they love them. If you're around a good teacher, a good nurturer, you're going to find somebody that probably has great lists that are color coded with bullet points, and maybe they even use highlighters, right? They're just masters of this. I think they're exceptional because I don't have the ability to do it whatsoever. Okay. The greater responsibility, stewardship, they really respect value logic. They value logic, systems, order, procedure. One of the things that can be difficult for a nurturer is that often on a team or in a family, they can be seen as like the wet blanket or the person that just keeps raining on the parade of the big ideas, where your pioneer, your connector are going to come in with this amazing idea. We're going to do this. It's going to be great. And the guardian just naturally begins asking sometimes antagonistic or very detail-oriented questions. Well, have you thought about this? Do we know what this costs? Do we know how we can communicate this? Do we have a system in the past that works on this? And it can feel antagonistic, and sometimes you can have conflict between a pioneer or a connector and a guardian, because you're like, dude, just get on. Like, just get on with the vision. Like, why do you always got to bring up, be all negative about what it is? And they're not being negative. They're being unbelievably helpful, because if those questions don't get answered, if that process doesn't get played out, right, and planned out, the plan is going to fail. And so they're so needed for that. One of the things that you have to be careful about if you are a guardian is you got to watch tone and tact sometimes in how you communicate. So you're not seen as someone who's just an interrogator, but that you're actually there to help and bring the best out of the situation. But they're so needed. A great guardian on any team. Okay. One of the things I want you to see is how important all 5 of the roles are. If you're going to have an effective team at work, you're going to have an effective team at home, if you're going to have an effective team in anything that you're a part of, you need to have all 5 voices present at a table, present on the team, and make sure that there is value given to each voice, right? These are their vocational callings, their vocational voices. And as people step up, if you can value the each voice, and each voice can value the contribution that they make to the organization, to the team, to the family, you're going to find something that operates at high capacity with high vision, high follow through, takes care of people. There's actually a process to where things get done. It is the archetype of humanity. And so if you don't know your type, I want you to go to 5voices.com. You can take the test. It's free. It'll give you a little assessment. There's a book out there that you can read about it. There's other podcast things you can listen to. But if you're struggling to understand and answer this first question, who am I? You're going to start with your vocational voice. And I implore you, do not waste any more of your life doing a bad impersonation of yourself. The world needs your voice. You need your voice to become who you're born to be. All right. Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. Questions, thoughts, hit me up with them, right? Daron at DaronEarlewine.com. You can also text me at 317-550-5070. I would love to be part of the conversation. And if you want deeper coaching in this for your team at work or at home or at play, I want you to head over to roguecollectivecoaching.com. You can schedule a discovery call with me and jump on. We can talk about it. Once again, roguecollectivecoaching.com. Go over, hit me up, and let's help you become who you're born to be and start getting answers to these core questions. Appreciate you listening to this episode of the podcast. And until we talk again, remember these 3 things. God is for you. He's not against you. He's near you. He's not far away. And he's created you on purpose and for a purpose. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Daron Earlewine Podcast.